Hello, this is Colin Liddell, the Chief Editor of Alternative Right. And this is a short 5 to 10 minute long podcast discussing matters relating to the site and briefly commenting on events of the day. Today is Sunday, the 5th of November. Well, recently we had some rather big news relating to the site. This happened on Halloween of all days. On the 31st of October, Japan time, the Alternative Right blogspot site, which had been shut down by Google following Charlottesville, miraculously jumped back to life. No one had expected this. Andy Nowicki hadn't, and neither had I. I was slightly more in the loop than Andy, but not much more. And I say that because what happened, shortly before the site returned, I had noted that it was 15 days until the complete deletion of the site. Now, what happens with Google is if you do something naughty and they decide to take your site down, it's your site is blocked for a certain period, and during that period you have the right to appeal, and if your appeal is refused, eventually the whole site and all its contents are completely deleted from Blogger. Now, I noticed that there were 15 days to go until the entire Alternative Right site would be completely deleted. So I decided to make another appeal. And of course, I didn't really expect anything to come out of that, because the original decision to take down the site had obviously been decided on by Blogger, and I had previously appealed to no effect, so I didn't really expect anything to be different this time. So when it did come back, it was a bit of a turn up for the books. Now, of course, by their professed standards of protecting free speech and only combating nasty, violent hate speech, Blogger obviously overstepped the mark with regard to the Alternative Right blogspot site, because we always kept things very, very polite and very, very civilized. We expressed opinions. We did not foment hate as such. We avoided lurid racial stereotypes and pejorative language. So by returning the site, they were only doing what was right. But having said that, there's no reason why they would do what was right, because Google, being Google, are a bunch of leftist twats. So the only reasonable explanation I can find for this happening is because Google are worried about possibly losing their monopoly. This is a real issue because because without certain key internet companies, you don't actually have an internet. And so this handful of companies basically monopolize the internet. And so if they decide to shut something down, they can do that. And this is quite a scary thing, not just for people on the alt-right, but, it's a scary thing for anybody who isn't a left-leaning liberal globalist. And right now we have a president who is not exactly a left-leaning liberal globalist. So by taking this high-handed approach, companies like Google bring themselves into the line of fire. And so I think what they're doing here is they're trying to remove themselves from the line of fire. They're trying to get back below the radar. And so they can go on doing their thing, keeping their monopoly, exerting growing power, but without being noticed too much. So I think what we've got to do, we've got to take advantage of that, but we've also got to push the case for these overpowerful, monopolistic internet companies to be regulated so that they can't just decide to shut down political opinions they don't happen to agree with. This is a very important free speech issue. Now, it's great that the site is back because the Alternative Right Blogspot site had, I believe, over 1,500 items. There were a lot of great articles there. There was a lot of alt-right resources there. And although most of it was backed up, getting all that information, all that content back up on the internet in an easy-to-access form was going to cost me personally a lot of hours. So I'm happy about that. I'd also like to thank the people that came to our help and assistance. So a special thank you to those people. You know who you are. I won't bother to name you and fame you. But regarding the site, we actually should say the sites, because we have two sites. We used to have two sites before. We used to have a written content site, and we used to have an audio content site, which was hosted by SoundCloud. The SoundCloud site is unlikely to come back because I think SoundCloud is a German company, and we all know how oversensitive they can be. Our audio content, such as it exists, is on the archive.org site. We will be looking at various options about what to do with our audio content. Most of that is also backed up, but once again, it's a process of finding the hours to restructure everything and get it all posted in an easily accessible format. So right now we have an interesting situation because we have the alternative-right.blogspot site, and we have the Alternative Right, one word, .blog site. Now, because of what Blogger did in the past, we have to regard them as essentially unreliable. At some time in the future, we might offend them in some way, or the balance of political power might change. For example, if Trump were defeated and the Democrats got into power, companies like Blogger might feel very, very empowered, and therefore they might once again take down our site. So we have to regard Blogger as essentially unreliable. Now, the WordPress site, Alternative Right, one word, .blog, is more reliable because that's actually a paid service. It would require a higher threshold for them to take that site down on a mere whim. So that site is to be considered more reliable. But there are also other factors to consider. I'm not really sure of the reason why, but the Blogger site seems to get more hits. And it's very important to get that kind of exposure as much as possible. So I think, bearing in mind that both sites have advantages and disadvantages, and we want to get all the advantages and avoid all the disadvantages, there's only one thing to do. We have to keep both sites. We have to double post. And we have to back up. Everything that's on one site has to be backed up on the other site. So if they take down one site, the other site is still there. Having discussed site matters in such great detail, there isn't really much time left over to focus on the events of the day. So it's probably best to leave that for some other occasion. Well, that's all for now. So I'll leave it there. Over and out.